Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to put a film, Alejandro Iñárritu's Biutiful, right on the couch for a full clinical diagnosis. We're about to break down the deep neuropsychology of its characters.
You know, some films, they do more than just tell a story. They're basically a detailed psychological case study. They give us characters that are so real, so deeply drawn, that we can actually observe their behavior, map out their symptoms, and even dig into the potential brain chemistry behind everything they do. And that leads us to the big question for today. We're not just looking at one character here. We're looking at an entire ecosystem of pain. So, what is the clinical diagnosis for the world we see in Biutiful?
Okay, first things first, let's set the scene. The world of this film is just one of extreme, relentless pressure. I mean, we're talking about characters who are trying to function under the crushing weight of existential stress, severe poverty, and this deep, unresolved trauma. This environment, it's not just a backdrop, it's an active ingredient, shaping their minds.
So, let's start with our main guy, the film's protagonist, Uxbal. He just seems to carry this profound exhaustion and sorrow with him everywhere. To really understand him, we have to do what a clinician would do. We have to just observe his behavior.
And when you look closely, a really clear pattern starts to show up. We see this chronic sadness, this deep sense of hopelessness. He's totally burdened by guilt, suffering from constant mental exhaustion, and he's pushing everyone away. His mind is always on death, and he can't sleep. These aren't just random quirks of his personality. No, these are classic, textbook symptoms.
So what's the clinical term for all this? Well, what Uxbal is going through is a major depressive episode. And this isn't just about feeling down. It's a persistent state that absolutely tanks his ability to function, and it's all driven by his cancer diagnosis, his poverty, and the nonstop stress of his life.
So what does that look like inside his head? Well, we can pretty much guess that key mood-regulating chemicals like serotonin and dopamine are probably plummeting. At the same time, his brain's fear center is likely working overtime, while the part responsible for control and reason is underactive. That's a perfect storm for feeling completely and utterly helpless. Okay, but that brings us to the weirdest part of his character, right? He sees the dead. I mean, he literally sees and talks to ghosts. From a clinical perspective, how on earth do we explain that? Are they real, or is something else going on in his brain?
Well, psychology actually has a couple of really compelling explanations for this that don't involve anything supernatural. First, you've got bereavement hallucinations. This is an incredibly common response to intense grief, where the brain's memory centers basically project an image of the person you lost. Then there's stress dissociation, where the mind, under insane pressure, just kind of detaches from reality, and that can cause visions.
And when I say common, I really mean it. Get this. Some research shows that up to 60% of people who are grieving report having some kind of hallucinatory experience of their lost loved one. So what Uxbal is seeing isn't automatically a sign of psychosis. It could actually be a really profound and surprisingly normal way his brain is dealing with all that grief and stress.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about our next case study. Uxbal's partner, Marambra, and wow, is her psychological state different. If Uxbal is a slow, steady burn of despair, she is an absolute storm of instability.
Everything about her is extreme. We see this intense emotional instability, right? Then these sudden bursts of aggression, and these incredibly impulsive, often dangerous actions. This gets punctuated by periods of hypersexuality, all swinging wildly between the state of manic, agitated excitement and then a deep, crippling depression. So, this classic up and down pattern, it points straight to a diagnosis of bipolar affective disorder. This is a condition where your mood, your energy, and your ability to function just swing between two completely opposite poles.
And this table does a great job of showing what's going on chemically. Think about it. During a manic episode, her brain is just flooded with these stimulating chemicals, causing agitation and impulsivity. But then, in a depressive episode, those exact same chemicals just bottom out, leading to a total crash. It's a literal chemical roller coaster inside her brain.
But you know, it's not just the adults who are suffering here. The film powerfully shows how this toxic environment creates this lingering echo that affects the most vulnerable people, the children and the undocumented migrants.
And these are the kinds of scars you don't always see on the surface. Uxbal's kids, they don't have a full-blown disorder yet, but they show all the signs of chronic stress. They're always on edge, that's hypervigilance, and they've been forced to grow up way too fast. And the migrants,
they're dealing with this awful cocktail of migration trauma, PTSD, and the deep depression that comes from poverty and exploitation.
And here's why that's so important for their future. For the children, constant stress puts the body's alarm system into overdrive. So the stress hormone cortisol, it's just always high. This makes the brain's fear center super sensitive and basically hardwires them for a lifelong vulnerability to anxiety and depression. The trauma they face today literally becomes the pathology of tomorrow.
So, where does all this leave us? We've diagnosed the individuals, but now we kind of have to zoom out and ask, what's the real root cause of all this suffering? What's the ultimate diagnosis here?
Because what this film shows so powerfully, so realistically, is that the real diagnosis, it isn't for Uxbal, or for Marambra, or for any single person.
It's for the world that created them. The sickness isn't just in their heads, it's baked into the social and economic world they're forced to live in.
There is a great analysis of the film that just nails it, saying it shows a psychopathology born from life's conditions, not from illness as a separate entity. Their depression, their anxiety, their instability, it's a rational, understandable response to a completely irrational and brutal world.
And that leaves all of us with a final, kind of haunting question to think about. In a world with this much suffering, with this much systemic failure, where exactly does a difficult life end and a clinical disorder actually begin? Biutiful suggests that maybe, just maybe, that line is impossible and perhaps even meaningless to draw.